Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. So this is the second episode of our podcast. The podcast is Beyond the Big Screen, and today's episode is going to be about how to write a short film script. Before we jump on to that, let me just give you a brief intro about what the podcast is. The podcast is completely about discussions around anything related to screens or that is visible on screens, you could say, like movies, animes, TV series, anything related to that. Everything behind the scenes related to filmmaking is also discussed over here. So that is what the main premise of the podcast is, and we'll be discussing everything around it. Today's topic is going to be about how to write a short film script, right? And you have me, your co-host, Aman, along with my co-host, Hardik and Karish here as well. So today's topic of discussion is how to write a short film
Yes.
script.
So, like the first episode that we did was about Prometheus. That was about an audience perspective. That is what we are consuming. Now, in this episode, we have changed the gear and it towards the maker side. So, if you are a person who wants to make films, so that is for them people. But also, if you want to understand, if you're an audience and want to understand how people make decisions, certain decisions that you don't agree with or you are curious about, you will also get to know that as well. Because sometimes, as a maker, it makes sense, but as an audience, it doesn't make sense. So that bridge can be great, can be done here, can be made here. Okay.
So
first, yes.
Okay. So before jumping on to the writing aspect, let's just talk about how we started getting into this field. Okay, how we got into the filmmaking aspect and how we got into the screenwriting aspect of it as well. Okay, so let's start with Kanish first, because why not?
I think we should start with Hardik. He'll have a much in-depth idea about what he wants to say.
The experience share करना. So कोई भी करो, कर.
Hardik.
Let's say for ठीक.
करो.
So question तो बता पहले.
अभी तो बोला कि how you got into filmmaking and how you got into the aspect of screenwriting as well. How you got into the genre of screenwriting and what motivated you towards the behind the scene aspect of movies, not just acting. What people can generally, lean towards.
Okay, so first of all, like particularly speaking about me, I've been into stories from a very young age. So from as back as 8 or 10 years of age, I've been reading a lot. So I was the only person who was excited for a book fair in the school or a library period. It's like I used to be very excited about reading books and all of that. So all of the children books like A Famous Five and Six, there was some group about Sherlock Holmes. These basic novels that everyone starts with. I have read those. So that is where my passion for story started. But eventually, I didn't get much good stories to read. So that is somehow I decided to shift into writing and see and understand the possibilities and how the nuances of the writing. That is one of the reasons. Of course, it was not the only reason, but one of the reasons.
Okay. Kanish?
For me, movies is a sort of art which I can really connect with. It really transports you to another world. So I started with novels when I was quite young, around 10 years, 11 years of age. And it really helped me build my imagination. And after that, it came when movies is somebody else showing you their imagination. And the way they're able to invoke your thoughts by asking you to delve deeper into your own consciousness. I really love that about films. So for me, that's where it started. Then, when I actually wanted to make films, the question was, what story do I write? Where do I get the story from? And the point is, the only way you'll be able to actually do something which is true to yourself is when you write it. So that's how my journey sort of started in this. And then, of course, I met these two guys, and yeah, it's been a roller coaster.
What about screenwriting?
Sorry.
What about screenwriting?
So yeah, so when you start trying to make films, you have to sort of write some sort of a script, even if you take the story from some sort of a online source, no copyright source, but you still have to convert it into a script, because otherwise, how do you communicate to the actors? How do you communicate to the cinematographer or even the editor? What exactly is the sequence? So there is where I actually started going into it, and then obviously writing your own stories is something else completely. But for me, that's where script writing came into the picture.
Hmm. Okay. So for my case, I'm someone who likes creating stuff a lot. I won't necessarily say it's just movies or anything, or writing scripts or anything. I'm someone who's a lot into, creativity, who likes to create things. That's why I'm a lot really into writing. It's not just about screenwriting, honestly. I feel like I enjoy writing anything. It could be like YouTube scripts also. It could be, besides that, maybe creating the flow for this podcast, thinking about, what kind of story we could discuss. That's something I'm really into. Again, for me, very first time I got involved in this was when I met these guys again. For me, same in college. That was when I got really hooked into this. I really started enjoying it also. One of the things I really enjoyed about Whiskey, I liked exploring the creative side of it. I liked thinking about stories. I liked, creating good stories. Not just things you can, talk about generally, like, people, just small kids create, not like that, properly how, professionals do it. And that's something I got really hooked into. That's why, enjoy creating these things now. Okay. So that's about me. All right. So now let's move into the aspect of the main aspect directly, Let's first discuss what's the difference between a short film script and a feature length movie script. And also, how do you differentiate the idea from that you can get from a feature film script to a short film script? So example, you could say like Whiplash. Whiplash was supposed to be a feature film, but they didn't have the budget, so they had to create like a short film for it first to get the budget for it, right? So you guys know this. So let's delve into that topic a bit, you know. So we'll start.
Kanishk has muted himself, so of course I have to start. Okay. So the one aspect of it, like, actually, if I see the lot of short films don't have much to say. That is one part, because most of the short films that are made are for learning purposes and are not for conveying a particular experience or a story. That is one thing. What difference between a feature film to a short film script? The idea would be the complexity. I think it's not a very it's a very simple answer if I say, not a very sufficient answer, but complexity is one thing, because in a short film, as the name suggests, it's short. You have a limited time, limited resources, most probably. So that is why the complexity that you deal with is also limited. But whereas in a feature film, like if you see feature films like Birdman, or here in India, if you see movies like Satya, or even if you see movies like Wednesday, or um, Gangs of Wasseypur, like these movies, they delve into various characters, into the environment that they live in. How do these their actions affect the people around them, or the world change around because of their actions? But in a short film, the the possibility of exploration is much more limited. So you have to manage that. That is one thing. Yes. So complexity, the resources, and the I would say, time duration is the main thing. Complexity is not so much like that. Because some short films are very great, and they are very great short films which are dealing with various complex issues effectively. And sometimes it happens like a feature film doesn't say anything, even though they ideally should deal with more complex things, but it doesn't happen. So then, if you say, what is the clear cut boundary between a feature film and a short film, then it would be a length. I'd like the length for a feature film definition is different in different areas, but ideally it's like 40 minutes under. So over 7 minutes and under like over 4 minutes and under 40 minutes is a short film, and over and above is a feature film length that you have.
Okay. मेरा second part का the question का I asked, ठीक है, what's the difference between feature film and short film? And the second part was, फिर तो whiplash के around मैंने पूछा था ना?
Like how do you, like for example, there are multiple movies like this. This is not the only Whiplash. For example, in India, Shore in the City is a movie, which was earlier a short film, which was converted into a feature film. And it does happen because, on paper, a lot of things may seem repetitive or does not seem much more intriguing. But when you see it on screen, the vision of the director or the creators get reflected into the movie. Then you actually can see like what the person is trying to do, and that is why the where finance comes in. Until unless you have a concrete vision and you know what exactly you're trying to do, a producer will not add in the money. So that is why a lot of people do the short film in their own limited capacity, and then if the producers like it, it gets into feature film.
But then how do you convert it then? Like if, let's say, I wrote a feature film and I want to convert it into a short film so that I could maybe get funding for it. Right. It's because obviously for a short film, I need less resources. So I can shoot it maybe with my own money also. I can hire less actors. Everything would be less, basically. Finances would be less compared to a feature film, right? So how would you go about converting a feature film to a short film? Because if you think about it, if you write a feature film completely, right, you might think a lot of aspects are completely valid and everything is going through the flow of it also. But you won't want to hamper something and cut short it to something very small, like in something to 15-20 minutes. Right. So how would you portray something so significant in just that small amount of time?
So if it's okay, I'll answer this question. So the thing is, you don't cut down a feature film to a short film. You usually take a climax or you take an important scene and you shoot that, or you shoot a trailer, and then you shop around with that to try to get more funding for the feature film. It's not that you are going to reduce a feature film to a short film. That's not possible. Even if you look at these short films of Whiplash and all, so for Whiplash specifically, it's just 3 different scenes which they have put in that, and they use that to get funding. That's what people do. They usually make a trailer or they make something like this so that they can pitch it to someone. Or else, how do you prove what you want to make? So that's more or less it. It's not that they reduce or try to remove the important scenes, because you can't do that. The entire reason why you have a 120-page script, a feature film, is because every page is important. So you can't just keep removing it and try to make it under 40 minutes, for example.
Okay, so there is another aspect to this. Okay, so let's draw another parallel. Okay, it's not related to films, but like what happens many times is that in book world, in writing world, what happens is there is a short story. A short story gets converted into a novella and then into a novel. So it happens multiple times that a person has started with a particular story, and this is a short story of 1,000 or 5,000 words, and then it gets converted into a novella and then into a novel. It happens multiple times. For example, the Shawshank Redemption, it comes from a short story. It is not from a novel as such. And there are multiple scenarios where a short story is get converted into a film. So what happens is, this is the core idea. For example, if you want to do a task, okay, say that you want to particularly do a task, so you break it into various aspects, and you just deal with one aspect. For example, if in a movie, let's take an example, Godfather. Okay, no, not Godfather, too complex. Take something simple. Let's take Whiplash for example. Okay, so in Whiplash, there is an angle of girlfriend and the boy who is trying to make it to the big thing, who is aspiration. That is one of the one of the aspects of the film. There is also one of the aspect where he's trying to deal with himself, with his musical capabilities, and there is also a segment where he is trying to fight outwit his own teacher. So there are 3 to 4 themes that are playing along a movie. But in a short film, you can just focus on one of the aspects and can compress it. That is one of the ways to do it, and and you basically try to find the core of it. For example, if I talk about a movie like Avatar, okay, if I have to make Avatar in short film, the essence of it is about being sensitive towards nature. That is the whole. Even the whole franchise is about only that only. That you have to be sensitive towards nature, and you have to be caring for nature and how beautiful nature can be. So that is the whole aspect for it. You just focus on that aspect and you remove everything else. The conflict between humans and the alien humans and the people on Avatar planet, and also the consciousness part that modern technology, the antagonist, all of that can be removed. That is just like a human body. There's skeleton, then there are nerves, there are muscle fibers, then there's skin. You must deal with the skeleton first, and then everything comes. That's how it is. So you have to build the skeleton, focus on the skeleton first.
Okay. Talking about the skeleton. Okay, then firstly, how do you decide what the idea or the story is going to be? That's basically the biggest skeleton, right? The cell, you could say, this starting point. What's going to be the idea? How do you decide? How do you evaluate an idea, or how do you find an idea for a story? Let's talk about that then.
Okay, so Karish, you want to take that?
For me, it's usually about what I think about even after I've sort of known about it. So, for example, uh, there was this idea about an ethical dilemma where a hungry person, if they're given a hungry vegetarian person in India, if they're given meat, will they eat it? So, for example, something like, for example, it's a very simple ethical dilemma, but something that sticks with you, which makes you think, okay, what would they actually do? How would it develop? So for me,
No,
the idea
wait.
usually.
I'd say you're going into the explanation of the idea, actually. I mean, fleshing out the idea. Because
No,
no,
I'm
what I
talking
mean by
about.
no, what I think the idea can be anything. Like when I say what should the idea be or what should the movie be about, it can be about anything. Like when I talk about a guy talking, maybe like them stupid also, very stupid idea. It could be something like a guy with one hand is trying to clap. Okay, it could be extremely stupid, but that's an idea, right? It can be about anything. It could be a crossover between your two favorite characters, maybe Chandler and maybe Sheldon from Big Bang Theory. It can be crossovers also. It can be anything what you want. But what you were talking about now you can continue. Like you were talking about fleshing out the story a bit more. Like how do you decide on?
No. So what your perspective is in terms of idea, mine is very different. For me, an idea usually starts from some sort of an ethical dilemma or some sort of character or some sort of a specific thing that I want to explore more about. What you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
is your way of looking at it. I don't usually flesh out ideas that way. For me, it's more about what exactly is the pure basic thing that you're trying to say, what you're trying to do, and then trying to build on that. So it usually starts with that. Even for example,
Acha.
Hardik story, whichever we have made, for me, it's not about the entire scripts. It's about what is are you trying to say. It's just that's the first step always for me. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to tell the world? What is it that they should know that they don't know yet? For me, it always starts with that. It's not even about the idea by then. It's about this. Then you go on to think about, okay, so how would we bring this out? What are the different ways in which we can show this to the world? Because if you look at some
Okay.
of the best movies that exist, the ideas usually are very simple, but they're set in a huge compass of space or time. So, for example, if have you seen this movie called About Time? It's a beautiful movie, and it's just trying to say live in the moment. That's it. It's so simple. It's just trying to say live in the moment, live every day as if it's your last. But they added that supernatural element that he can go back in time, and so he learns through his mistakes, etc. So, so in that case, for example, it would be something like this. Okay, I want people to understand that they need to live every day as if it's the last. So, what are the different ways in which you can do? And there's a lot of movies which talk about this exact same thing. But About Time did it in this way. So all movies are different, but it's about what they're trying to say, which uh, usually I start with.
Okay. ठीक है मेरा तो like my perspective is a bit different obviously. I like to think about it in terms of an idea which I like it can be anything, like it could be really random also, it could be about time travel, it could be about time machine. I want to think about those things, that's my point. I want those elements to be there. Then maybe fleshing out a bit more, like what I said about a one hand guy who wants to clap. Then you can think about what problems that guy could have, right? Then you can start building the story around that guy, what moral dilemmas or what philosophical problems he has, or emotional problems he has, or physical problems he has, whatever, and how he overcomes them. I like to think it on that terms. Okay, and Hardik.
Okay, so see, right now we're talking about how does the idea, how do you validate an idea and how do you get that idea? Okay, so as we have heard, Kanishk and Aman have different perspectives. I will have a different perspective. So everyone who is listening right now, there is no right or wrong way to do this. Okay, so in writing particularly, there is no right or wrong thing. Okay, so it has to be your own way, which you have to be truthful for, and your way will work for you. It will may not work for anyone else, but it would work. It should work for you. So my way is different from both Kanishk and Aman. So for example, I'm actually more inclined towards Kanishk's idea that basically you want to try to say something, but there are three aspects to any movie that you see, or and I'm talking about any content that you consume. Okay, so there is three things. There are three things involved. One is the baseline or the concept that you want to theme that you want to convey. That is, for example, if I say what is uh, Godfather about, so Godfather is about it's essentially about family. It's essentially about family. It's nothing else about it but family, and all of that it reflects. Okay, anything else is built upon. If I say what Ramayana is all about, Ramayana is all about one of the greatest uh, epics in the existence. Ramayana is all about trying to do the correct in the times of hard. Even we're faced with dark things, and with the various forces, you have to do the right thing. Be it any character, be it the character of Rama or Hanuman, they do the right things in difficult times, and that is what has been preached to us in a lot of ways. And the same concept has been deployed with various movies till date. That is one thing, the concept, and then there is the way of telling it, as Kanish said. So, for example, a simple thing like family duel or family conflict is explored in Godfather as well, is explored in Mahabharata as well, and is explored in Bahubali as well. Okay, so like the concept of family duels is there, but how do you build the story? What genre you build in? For example, as Kanish said, About Time is about living in the moment. Okay, so it's about have used sci-fi. Then there is movie called Groundhog Day. Is that
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day is also about similarly in that space. I would say not exactly, but a little bit overlap is there. Then the movie Anand in India cinema, that is also about living in the moment, and it's completely different from About Time. It's not sci-fi; it's just drama. about a person who is going to die, and he knows that he's going to die. But how does he live his life to his fullest? That is all about the movie. So then, about when you have first conceived the idea, then it's how do you want to tell it. It can be n number of ways that you want to tell it, and then comes about the new part of it, the innovation part of it, because people have already told me the concepts remain the same. Because as human beings, you if you see all of these stories in the world, basically they have they have some basic plots which can't be changed, because every human beings unfortunately makes the same mistakes as their older generations have made. And that is why epics exist, because these stories still connects and still mistakes we do. And that is how religion propagates time and again through generations. So the basics remain the same. Then there is the way that you want to tell about, that may change. Okay, so it can be a sci-fi, it can involve dinosaurs, it can involve robots, AI, anything. You can do that according to your own times. It gets fitting. And another thing that is important is the newness or the individuality that you want to bring it. For example, if I say I want to tell a sci-fi story that speaks about living the moment, that has already been done by multiple people throughout the country, throughout the world. Okay, globally, if you see now, it's global world. So maybe Korean movie has been made about it, or Indonesian movie has been made about that already. But your individuality, your experience brings to that, makes it unique. So that happens a lot of times, because when you sit down and you start to write an idea, at the first you will think that this has already been done. So why should I tell this? Because people have already seen this. But you as a writer, you as a creator, you will bring your own uniqueness to it. If you're honest writer, then you will bring that uniqueness and your voice to it. And that is what people will watch films for. Like if you go to like for example, Satyajit Ray is one of the finest writers that India has produced. And if you go to his movies, a person go to see his movies because he understands the people that are there. He understands the everyday life of a person, how they think, how they feel. And that is why the people watch the movies. Or if you see a movie of Martin Scorsese, you're trying to see because these are dark people and we should avoid being them. So these voices then make you as a writer or a creator than you are.
Sorry, Karo.
Yes. Like I want to know, how do you particularly validate an idea? For example, if you have an idea that you want to make film about, okay, then how do you choose? Like you have if you like say if you make 10 ideas about making a film, how do you choose you want to make this film and not that film?
To be for me, it totally depends. Like if let's say you have 10 ideas, right? And if you want to think about a good idea among them, like the general thing, what I would say is the story in which I could flesh out the character a lot more. Right. Let's say again the same thing. Like if there's a guy who has one hand, he wants to clap. Right. It sounds like a very stupid story, but if you flesh out the character a lot more, if you think about, building out the base of it a lot much more. If you let's say he might be a cheerleader. Let's assume that guy might be a cheerleader, right? If he's a cheerleader, he might need to use his hands a lot more. If his hands got cut down or his hand is fractured, he can't, do that things. What problems that would cause for him, right? I like to think about it in those aspects. How much impact that one character could have on the story, the main character would have on the story, that could, make or break the story, basically. Right. If you just talk about a simple this thing, like a crossover between two characters, if it's a short film about crossover between two characters, it's not really that you could make it good, but it totally depends on how you portray it. So it totally depends on what your thinking aspect about an idea is. Like if I have 10 ideas, it totally depends on how I'm going to evaluate it. In which idea I can flesh out the character a lot more. Right. If it's a simple story about a love story between two people who are living in different times, it's a time travel story. Right. In that, there's, at least for me, I don't think there's something that can go on to flesh out a story on, because I can't really think on those lines that perfectly, right? But thinking about love, what would happen if you met someone, if you lose them, what would happen? I'm not able to flesh out the characters on those sense, right? At least that's what I think. That's why those ideas started to drop them, and I would go towards at least some topics where you'd have like if someone was bullied a lot in school, or if someone you know uh, something relating to that. If he was someone who's bullied a lot in school, I would relate to that a bit more, and I would try to write. I would know my experiences, and I could maybe flesh out the character in that sense, and I could know from my experience what I could give to that character. That is something I would like. That's something I think on when I try to validate an idea. Okay.
For a different perspective. So what you're saying is that if you have experience in something, only then you validate it. If you have
Not like that. Like, I would say if you have experience in it, it could be a better story. That's my point. I'm not saying you can't make it if you don't have experience in it,
No,
but
like I'm just talking about your perspective. Like for you specifically, if you don't have any experience, you don't try to delve into it, right?
maybe if I do delve into it, firstly, I do delve into it. It's not like I don't. But the problem is, it doesn't turn out good. Right? If you want to write a good one, I feel like if you have experience in it, you can actually share a bit more. Or the other aspect is try to experience life a bit more in that sense. Right? If you want to write movies on a lot of aspects, you try to experience life a bit more on those aspects as well. Then you have experience, then you can write on it as well. I think that would make a better story.
Like I also like one thing related to this, as you said that you have to experience life in some aspect to actually make good content. So a lot of people are actually in a dilemma as to when a person should start writing. I'm saying that for the fact like many people who are starting at 23, 24, they generally hear that you don't have a lot of experience, so don't start writing, because your writing would be very shallow or very bookish. So that happens. Along with that, they also have a race with time, because people want to be writers as soon as possible. Some people, okay, that is what I'm. What do you look at that? Like, should a person, like, if a person is at a 20 in his 20s, should they become writers, or like when they have gained experience, when they have lived life at like 50s, they should delve into writing?
According to me, it doesn't really matter. Experience is something that I really discount. I don't think about it that way, which you two do. For me, it's not about if you have experienced it or not. It's about if you can empathize, if you can talk to people, understand what they actually went through. If you can empathize with them, I think you can still make a very good story. You can write a very good script. It's not about you experience everything, because let's face it, you will not experience everything in life. It's about how much you can relate, what you can bring to that scene. It's about your vision. What exactly is that specific component that you want to show in that? And then you try to explore more about that. That's my perspective on that.
I think if you want to write, you should start reading a lot as well. Like not just movies, or not just watching movies, but writing them. Sorry, reading them, novels, movies, scripts, all these things. That will give you a better understanding of how writers are thinking about when they write. Or maybe I'd actually just look at I would say just go and see some master classes or some people how they write, what they think about how they write. That gives you like at least a baseline of what you need to do when you start writing. The problem with the experience part is because I feel like if you don't have the experience about some aspect, it doesn't you can't convey it properly. That's just what I think. Or maybe you might have seen, or you're someone who's a good observer, you see how people are behaving, you can maybe write on that lines. But I feel like if you don't experience it, you don't, can't write that well. Like if I talk about bullying, like let's say you're someone who's afraid of going to school or college or whatever, you're afraid of doing that. now also some things happen. Sometimes it happens that people go into a phase where they want to feel like they can't live with themselves. They hate every aspect about themselves, right? Like if let's say let's say my nose is a little bit longer compared to other people, you'd want to chop off your nose just to you try to hurt yourself in those aspects. You cry in your pillow or something, just so that people are torturing you like that mentally. I'm just talking about this thing, like the mental aspect of it, like what people face. Like I'm just, and generally also about
You are
bullying,
saying
not that.
you are saying that like you have experienced some aspects, so like you can also branch it out much more broadly than other people would.
Huh. Because I think experience
Example,
counts
so
a lot.
see, the point is, my point is, like, if you have seen movies like Incendies or Martyrs, or even like a horror film, like, you've never experienced a ghost in your life, so then that means you won't be able to write it, right?
The other thing is that comes with experience also, right? You can't be like, initially I'm talking about people who are beginning, right? We're talking about people who are starting off. Because
Even when
that's
it's
the
starting
main.
off, I feel if you just write something that you're passionate about, it doesn't necessarily mean you have experienced it, but if you're passionate about it, then it can go a long way, because the point is, not everybody is comfortable talking about the trauma or something that they've already been through. So
Hmm.
what happens is, if they're really keen about something, for example, science fiction, something that so many people love, so they can just delve into it, and then fleshing out the characters and everything, that comes with experience. I completely agree. That comes with watching a lot of movies, reading a lot of novels, understanding how characters are written. That's true, but you just start off with something you're passionate about and then keep on building on that.
I don't know, I mean, it's fair, right? It's not wrong. Also, if you don't want to talk about those things, you can keep on just building whatever you like. It's not like a written science that you need to do this or that. I'm just saying that what I feel is that if you have experience, you can write maybe good, better stories relating to that topic compared to about maybe a love story or something. If you have experience, then maybe you can write on a love story as well. But experience, I think, counts a lot. If you have experience in something, maybe you can bring out a very good story out of it. Especially if you saw that IFP winner, that Paul won. Yeah, the Paul, that stutterer guy who was not able to speak. There was a short film on him. He was a stutterer and he wanted to go and propose to a girl. The problem was that he was so self-conscious about himself that he used to discount everything about his life. He used to torment himself, feeling that he's the worst person in this world just because he can't talk to people, and everybody around him is being troubled because of him. You know, maybe it not that guy who wrote it might not have experience, but you kind of understand what that guy might have went through if you have experience in something similar to that. And it brings out a better story because you can think of a lot more scenarios around it. You can play around with a lot more scenes in it also. Some scenes could also be more impactful, some could be less impactful.
Okay.
Huh.
I think one thing is also that I think in theory or on surface level, Kanishk and Aman might differ, but actually they're talking about the same thing. That is interesting because it's about experience, like how much depth understanding you have of the life. It can happen through direct medium like observation or experience, or it can happen through indirect mediums like films, movies, TV shows, or any other man-made communication. Okay, but essentially it's like how do you develop uh, your human understanding? But that is also a question, because your human understanding when you're a teenager or when you are in 20s is not that great. When you're 40s and 50s, it is amusing, like it is it should be better probably.
Hmm.
So then of course uh, it makes much more sense when you start at 40s or 50s than you may start at 20s or 30s. What do you have to say about that?
I don't understand. So, what are you asking? Are you asking if a person should start writing when they're 50 or when they're 20? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I'm asking basically like when you are our 20s, you have a limited worldview.
Experience.
You have no world, like you will not have a
Okay,
lot
okay.
of things
Calm down.
experience.
Okay, now I understand. No, I don't think you should start writing when you're 50. I think you should start writing as soon as you get the bug for it, because it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of rewrites. Yes, initially you might not have the experience to write something good. You might look back and think it was trash, but unless you start, you're never going to reach anywhere. Definitely start as soon as you can. Don't think about how you might not have knowledge about something. For example, it's very possible that you get contracted by somebody to write a sort of a script for people who are going through depression. Now, you might have never gone through a depression. So, what do? How will you do? So, you research on that, you talk to people, and then you sort of formulate an idea about it, and then you write. Then, 30 years later, it's possible that you yourself have gone through it, you see it in a very different light, and you write something very different. That's completely plausible, and it's very possible that after the 30-year period, you will write something which is actually very good. But that shouldn't deter you from writing something right now, right?
Agreed. I also feel the same thing. Like, even if you don't have the experience, you should still start writing. Like, even with the writing part of it, you can experience like some of the aspects of what story you're writing, I guess. Right? Because you'll do a bit of research, you go through some articles, you might go through some videos, you might see if you're writing about someone who's having schizophrenia, let's say, you might go to some videos, you see what they feel, you try to write a more realistic approach. You try to give it a more realistic approach towards writing that, right? It's not always going to be about experience, to be honest. Again, that also comes with experience again. So you need to start as early as possible, and whatever you write, you'll have to maybe do a bit of research, do a lot of thinking, do a lot of rewrites, and then obviously you'll just get better over time only.
Coming to rewrites, okay. So like you have drafted a particular story. Then how do you judge it, and how do you make sure that you want to remove this and you want to add this or you want to modify this? How do you do that?
How would you do it? You tell me.
Okay, so for me, it's like example, like first of all, you write it. Okay, so whatever thing that you have written, you wrote it, and you try to write it as in the best possible manner at the moment you can think of. So, and then it's it's just the first draft or second draft, and then you basically after like it's the procedure that I follow is that I don't touch it for a few days, and then I again revisit and read it as a reader and see if it making sense to me or not, or what part I'm excited about, or what part is just filler there, just cement there. So just try to understand, and then all that which is just filler, I try to remove it first, of course, and then try to shorten as much as possible, because I think in this day and time you should not, like, every second that person watches, you are basically consuming their time. You have to be conscious of that, of the fact that you have to keep it as short as possible in whatever format that you're making, be it a short film or be it a feature film. Don't try to extend it. Like, try to be as crisp as possible in every scene and every line that you write. Of course, it is challenging, and not every time it's possible. Sometimes your resources, sometimes your thinking, or sometimes your experience restricts you from doing that. But try to aim for that. And also, as I said, the structure of it. For example, currently, like, I was writing a short film in which I had to write a scene where the person has to be depressed. I have to show that the person is the protagonist is depressed. And earlier the scene was around 8 pages now, but now I cut it down to 2 pages. So, like, this, I tried to see if that feeling of depression that I was conveying in 8 pages, I've cut it down to 2 pages, but is the feelings still them or not? So then I revised, and the 2 pages became 3 pages. Now also I'm down to 5 pages, but the feeling is there. The feeling is important. So are there multiple things, right? The time that you're investing in, the feeling that is generated, the implication of it. For example, many times what happens is They have written a scene in the starting, and there is no follow up of that. Like there is a scene that starts with the film starts with, and then nothing an entire film, nothing happens related to that scene. So it's basically a disjoint that is there in the film. And when you write, so you don't write an entire film or short film script in one day. Usually, it takes many sittings to do that. So what happens is like in one sitting you have a different mindset and different mood, and another you have a different mood. So this is disjointed writing that you do. But as a viewer, as an audience, it is always an one experience. So you have to keep in mind that is that experience coming along or not. If the experience is coming along, everything is fine.
How do you like figure out that experience or that feeling is getting portrayed? Like when you wrote those 8 pages, you might have thought that those feelings are there, right?
Yeah, initially you do, but then that comes with experience, and eventually there is a hunch, because that hunch has to be also developed. As a creator, you have to also develop that hunch, whether it is enough or not. And to be very honest, after a certain time period, you will get that hunch, and this is good or not. Every writer or every creator that makes something, after been practicing for certain years, they'll get the hunch whether this is working or not. And that is instinctive. It's not something that you can teach, or is there a certain formula that can be set up. It is a hunch that you have to develop.
Okay.
Fewer words to explain the same thing. That's all I look for. If I've written 10 lines in one page, if I can reduce it to 3 lines and it will still mean the same thing, I'll reduce it. That's what rewrites do. And I agree with Hartik's point. I usually keep it aside for a week or two, refresh my mind, and then come back to it. You have to look at it from a different angle. You can't be stuck in that loop again and again.
Yeah, the main thing about writing is you are the villain, you are the hero. So you have to understand that because you are only creating and you are also reviewing it at the same time. So you are the editor, you are the creator as well. So that I would say dual personality comes in conflict, and that you have to balance it out. It's a challenge, but that is the challenge.
Sense
That
of
is a
it.
part and parcel of writing. Yeah.
Another thing that helps me is usually bouncing ideas off someone. So if I'm stuck, if I'm not getting what I want, I usually talk to these two or I talk to somebody else. What usually it helps me to get a different perspective, and it usually helps me to shape it a bit better. So do not discount the value of getting any advice from other people, even if they're not writers. But people usually have a good knack for understanding what you have written. So if they can follow what you have written, then that usually means that you're doing a good job.
Yeah, adding to that point, what happens is people may have not written anything in their entire life, but they must have consumed or read different stories and watched different films. That is for sure. So don't underestimate the power, like the understanding and the capabilities of a person just because they're not writer. It may be a friend, it may be your parents, it may be your child, or it may be even your sibling. So don't discount that. Share it with as many people as possible, and try to share it in person. Okay, if you send them an email or a WhatsApp message, they will not read it for 40-50 days. You will just keep on following and they will forget about it. Try to keep it in person as possible, and just ask what they think of it. Okay, and try to gauge the as honest feedback as possible, because some, like back in India, what happens is people are trying to be nice. People are trying to not hurt your feelings, so they will say it's nice, 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 but try to invoke an honest response from them. That is also a responsibility of the writer itself, that you have to form a particular group or for particular tribe where you can seek honest feedback.
That I completely agree with Hardik's point. That's very, very important because usually what happens is if you just go to a friend, they will just say, "Oh yeah, it's good, it's fine, not bad," and they might say one or two things. But you really need critical feedback at that point. So you need to have friends who are ready to insult you to your face, and you can't take any of that personally, even though it will hurt like hell. And that really shows what kind of person you're made of. That's why it's very important to have people like that around who will give you critical feedback, not just about stories in general, but in life also. You need people like that who are okay with telling you what you're doing is wrong, or this is not the right thing to do, even if it insults you or if it hurts you. So having people like that around, never discount that. It's very important. I think.
Uh, so actually, we jumped a bit forward over here. Before discussing rewriting, we should discuss story structure. So let's go back to that now. Let's talk about how you structure a story first before going to the rewrites. Actually, let's talk about this now.
There is
How
no
you structure?
There is no structure. It's just an construct that people say, but there is no structure. Some of the best movies that you will see in your life, they will not follow any sort of linear structure. So never think about structure, I would say. Up to Hardik now.
About structure, actually, if you study the books of screenwriting, there are structures. Okay, there are particular formulas that people fit in. There is one particular very famous structure, the hero's journey, that all people will talk about, and there is also three-act structure that people will follow and people will talk about. And there are multiple others as well, five-act structure and all of these. But what happens is, what I have the understanding is films or TV shows or any anime that you're watching, it's basically life. It can be imagination, it can be real, it can be blend of imagination and reality, but it's basically life that you're watching in whatever capacity, be it a documentary as well. It's someone's life. Anything it can be. So life doesn't have any structure to it. What I understand in my limited understanding is that life doesn't have a format. It, of course, there's a general life that people live, like going to school, getting a job, getting married, having kids, dying off, etc. But there is no limited pattern to that. Different people have different lives to them. Similarly, movies have different structures to them. So don't like a person should know the structure, but that's it. Then their instinct, then their creative process should lead the structure of the movie, and not any particular formula structure that is taught in various books and schools.
The
What I
problem is,
think
as
is,
soon as you think about structure, as soon as you read about structure, you become hooked to it. So you have to very carefully detach yourself from it. And most people are not able to do that, which is why I would not recommend it. I mean, you were going to say something. Sorry.
what I think is that there's like a very small structure that everyone should follow about this, of any film or any short film or whatever you're creating. And it's not relevant just to movies or anything. It's relative to even if you're creating like a YouTube video or any Instagram post or LinkedIn post you're writing. All of them should have these structures. One, that is whatever you're writing, that story should have a meaning, firstly. That's obvious, right? There should be something that should be happening in the movie, right? That should be something external, right? It could be anything that the person is trying to get. And whatever story that revolves around whatever he's trying to get should be met with some conflicts that they're trying to get, that either they're stopping or they're not stopping, right? And those conflicts should be, and the whole movie should be resolved around him filling out his internal conflict. Like, let's say, example, like that Stutterer movie, short film. The biggest problem in the whole thing he wanted to go and meet that girl and ask her out, right? But the biggest problem or the biggest conflict he had was inside himself only. That was the self-consciousness, basically. He was so self-conscious that he felt that the whole world would laugh at him if he asked her out or something like that. And how the story revolved around from that to him asking her out is that the story progressed by basically, him facing some problems. Let's say he was trying to call a guy to tell to the phone bill guy, telling that the phone bill was too high and he wanted to reduce it, but he wasn't able to speak on that, and the guy was cussing at him during that time. Right, that time he felt so bad. Once his father was told something, bad just because he couldn't communicate something to the other guy. So these things made him feel so bad about his life. He felt so, degraded at that point that if he thought that if he went and asked that girl out, she would have rejected him. But the story goes to the climax point when he starts figuring out that, he's not that bad. He could ask that girl out, and whatever happens in that. So I think this is like a small structure I think everyone should follow. Like the story does revolve around something. It's not completely about, if you think about like what Hardik just said, it's about life. It is about life, but in life you have problems. So you need to think about that problem in a very sequential manner also.
Okay. So, Aman, what you're talking about is the elements in a movie and elements in a story. What elements should be there in the story? Like conflict should be there. There should be problem. There should be some antagonist. There should be some
Story
motivation.
structure वही हुआ ना.
Elements and structure is different. Structure is like first person should face some problems, then they should get up, then they should have some support from other person, then they should have a new power, then they are facing the current challenge. So this is a set structure, a beat to beat structure that they follow. Now what you're telling is conflict should be there. Any movie.
This
and
is
internet
not. I think this is structure only. Because if you look at any movie, actually, it's always the same structure all of them follow, right? It's because there's a guy or girl, they have a problem that they want to fulfill, or there is some motive to the movie, right? Maybe your kid is kidnapped, you want to get him, rescue him from that. There's a motive to the story, but the whole motive revolves around like a bigger aspect of it, that is like that person's internal problems that they're facing. It could be anything. It could be like, feeling that the person who kidnapped that guy is this thing. Your father, let's say, your father is the person who kidnapped that kid and he wants to kill him just because a very random reason that you don't spend that much time with your father, but with his son, that guy spends. That could be something very random. So it revolves kind of around that internal problem that he's facing in his head, that why did he give so much time to his father? He didn't spend that much time. Something like that. This is very stupid, but something like that. I think this is one structure that is always followed.
No, beg to differ here. For example, if you see Richard Linklater's films, okay. For example, if you see the Before trilogy, okay. Before trilogy, before like the first movie, Before Sunrise, there is no conflict. There is no antagonist that is there. There is no internal dilemma that is happening. It is just two people chatting, and that's it. The movie is just that it's about. So that is why we don't try to fit it in. See, what happens is because we are accustomed to a certain kind of cinema, especially what we're talking currently about mainstream cinema. So that is why a mainstream has a mainstream public as well, which wants to see that kind of films only. But if you see now, there are a lot of films, like for example, I don't remember the name of the film and the name of the director. He is a Polish director, and he has made a film of about 1 hour and 50 minutes, and that in that screen, on the screen there is only a blue wallpaper. That's it, blue solid wallpaper. That's it in the movie, and he's a very reputed auteur. But there is like with films you can do anything. You can experiment, but when you try to structure these things like as a conflict or these things, then what happens is like initially when you start out writing, you will use these. People will tell you use this, stick to this, but you have like you can use this, no problem in using these. These are all people use that, but you have to develop certain risk-taking and innovative capabilities to push the boundaries of what cinema can do, what films can do, what short films can do, and what stories can do.
Hmm.
That is how innovation happens.
I agree with Hardik. If you think about structures like that, then you are screwed, because then you'll always be thinking about, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this. But some of the best movies which have revolutionized cinema, they don't usually have any sort of uh, specific format that they follow. Before Trilogy is an excellent example of that. Even if you look, actually, if you look at any of Linklater's film, even if you look at Boyhood, for example, in Boyhood, there is no conflict. It's just about life. That's it. Any slice of life anime, also, if you watch, some of them don't have any conflicts.
It's not always about conflicts. What I mean by conflicts isn't like the ladai honi chahiye or there should be some fight angle, like there should be some turmoil in that. Not like that. Conflicts means that something simple also. Like if you want to get married to someone tomorrow, your boss tells you that you can become an astronaut who will go to NASA. You have to choose between getting married to someone you love or going to Mars or something to live over there. It's something very
That's called a
simple.
conflict itself. You're
If you
completely
see
right. That's a conflict,
dilemma,
and that's what
let's
we're
call
trying to say.
it a dilemma. Okay, it's a dilemma. It's a dilemma. It's a
Dilemma,
choice.
conflict, whatever you want to get. It doesn't.
Yes.
What I'm trying to say is, it doesn't matter if you have some sort of a conflict or a dilemma. It's fine if you make a movie without it also.
Like you can make it, but see, that is what I was trying to say. If it is, don't try to see as a structure. Try to see it as a life. Was life like the movie Before Sunrise? People love it because it's a genuine conversation that they're having. It's genuine. People want to watch genuine things on screen for some time. Not all the time, but for some time, people like to see genuine things, genuine emotions, being things that they want to speak about, but they can't speak about. So that is a let out, and that is what
Hmm.
a part of art is.
Not just that, sometimes people just want to experience. For example, in Before Sunrise, have you never thought, maybe I meet a stranger on a train and we just walk and talk? Like, it's so simple, but it's something that people would like to experience. And so this movie shows what is the possibility of that happening. And if you do that, what's the possibility that the night will go like? Just one possibility, but it's so beautiful. That's where it shines. You don't need to always have some sort of a dilemma.
Can you give me an example of what happens, what kind of conversation those guys are having in the movie
I don't
Before
want to spoil it for
Sunrise?
you.
And spoil it.
I really don't want to spoil. No, not just for
Just
you.
spoil it.
I don't care about you. I care about the people who are viewing this.
Spoilers ahead, guys. If you want to move forward, you can go now. Full.
Trust me, it's such a brilliantly beautiful movie.
Yeah,
I mean,
actually,
for example, at one point, sorry, Hardik, you're
Yeah.
saying something.
bol. Continue.
What did they talk about? So, for example, at one point, they're walking a street, and this guy, he comes up to them, and he says that, I'll write a poem for you. You give me one word, I'll write a poem for you. And if you like it, you can give me some money. And he
Hmm.
does. And it's a very, salt of the earth poem. And both of them are discussing after that about the poem. And he's like, oh, it must be the same for everyone, because he's not a optimist. He's sort of a skeptic, a very realistic person. And she's like, no, it was so beautiful. He must have thought it on the spot, etc. Like, through the conversations, you try to understand, you find out more about those people involved, and it connects you so much with them. It's just amazing.
So what was this movie about? What's the main plot of it? Kya hai story iske? But
Nothing.
there is two people talking.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
Which
it's still one
opinion?
of my favorite films. Yeah, I still watch it sometimes. It's so amazingly made. All the three of them, not just one.
Okay, so there is another movie called Summer. That is made in Hungarian. it's a Hungarian movie, okay, and in that movie, a person dies. One of the friends dies, okay, and that's like, and what happens is the movie follows is what, like when a person dies, what are the implications of it to the other people, and movie explores that. In that also there is no conflict as such, or there is no antagonist, but it is just that how different people experience life. A death of a person many people have experienced, and how does it impact every individual is a thing that beautiful in its own way.
There's a lot of movies like this. There's this
It's like an
Taiwan.
anthology then, na?
It's not an anthology, it's a proper movie.
But a movie compiled with like love stories. It's like an anthology, like a movie which has separate stories, right?
No, it's proper, it's a movie,
It's a proper
one
movie.
movie.
Even this movie called Yi Yi, it's a Taiwanese film, 2000 film. It's like 3 hours long or something. And even then, it's like there's no dilemma. It's just about the life of a family. That's it. So that way, I can give you a lot of good examples about movies which have no dilemma. It's just about the general ongoings, and they're very amazing. The dilemma isn't
See,
important, it's about what you're trying to say. Sometimes
in
the
the
dilemma
What are
movie,
they trying to say?
for example, in Before Sunrise, I don't know, I don't know how to explain this. It's about the beauty in conversations, I would say.
see, for me there are two things, okay. I think Before Sunrise is about knowing a person. How do you know a person? It's only through your conversations that you actually know a person. How do they behave, or how do they speak, or how do they crack a joke, or how do they insult someone, that you actually get to know a person. There is no other way to do that. And the easiest and the most practical way of people doing that is through conversation. So there is, how do you know a person, how do you can know in a best possible way, is something that is not very fixed or very scientific. It depends from person to person, and it's very subjective. So films are for that as well, where you explore the what is a subjective domain, and also
I
we are
feel like
talking
यहाँ पे
about
नहीं, I feel like
uh,
यहाँ पे these guys are not mixing, but they're building elements from concepts like blogging to this point. Because if you think about blogs in a general sense, people are really into what's happening in other people's lives, right? Like any random blogger, you're very invested in what's happening in his life. They might not really have a story around it, but you really enjoy watching the everyday happenings of what that person could be similar to what you're trying to say over here. This like one element of filmmaking. Maybe the person who created and thought it in a very smart way. That vlogging might be not vlogging, but just exploring how people are traveling or living their life without having any problems, and like giving people the audience a sneak peek into their life, like how a general day unfolds for them, not necessarily without any problems or anything. Just and people are just enjoying the fact and seeing what's happening with them, just roaming around.
I think at a surface level, yes. At a surface level, it looks like both are dealing with everyday lives. But the important part about, especially the movies that you're talking about, is the honesty with which the things are conveyed. I think don't think so in a vlog things are conveyed in a very honest manner, or in a truthful manner. They are conveyed to cater to certain audience in a certain section. Like if the Lamborghini that is coming over, if you're dating for 50 women or something like that. If you're you are unboxing a particular technology, or you are putting a certain kind of lipstick and trying to show how different shades look like that. That is about a certain thing. It's not about truthfulness or about honesty. But in movies that we have discussed, it's about genuine real life connection.
Hmm.
And sometimes
That's
the dilemma can also be very, very small. For example, there's this movie called I forgot the name. It's with Adam Driver, and basically he's a bus driver in that, and it's just his life. That's it. There's really no dilemma. It's just about him. Just one small thing that happens is that his poem notebook is sort of torn by a dog, and he's very sad
Hmm.
about it. And after that, he goes out. He's sitting on a park bench. He meets this random Japanese guy who gives him a notebook, and they talk about poems. That's it. And he comes back, and that's it. Like the entire movie is just about his life, and it's very simple, very subtle. So again, dilemma is not something I would put a lot of focus on. I mean, that's just me.
Okay.
Which story or short film have you guys written that you're really proud of? What was the story? How did you get inspired by it? And why are you so proud of it? Aman, you go first.
Hmm. Okay. There was one story. There was about it was basically a very general story, like a crossover between, I told you this also, Richard Hendricks from Silicon Valley and Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory. Okay, and that story, why I thought I was so good, because Sheldon is like a very habitual creature who's an extremely smart person, extremely smart person who lives, who's a germaphobe, who doesn't like talking to people, who doesn't like, people touching him or doing anything. And he's extremely disciplined, likes doing everything on time, like very, like a very, organized person, you could say, and a very smart, organized person. And Richard Hendricks, on the other hand, is like a very smart guy as well from Silicon Valley. The only thing with him is he's very shy, timid, your general average nerd, you could say, if you think about it. Right. And Sheldon is also like a very weak little nerd kind of guy, but he's like a very vocal person who doesn't think about anyone else's feelings. He doesn't have that sense of understanding what emotions is. Okay, so he just randomly blurts out anything and he gets, maybe bullied for it or punched for it or something like that from other people. What I wanted to do with that story was that there was a crossover between these two guys. And in that crossover, Sheldon, who's is actually someone who created like a time machine, right? And Richard was a guy whose wife or someone whose wife was actually someone who was going through cancer, and the antidote for that cancer treatment would be available in the future. Now he went to Sheldon to let him go to the future to get that antidote for his wife. But the one thing that I really, you know, loved about this thing was I added a scene where Sheldon tells him that if he wants to go to the future, he has to do something for him. Right. And Richard says that he'll do anything. He would do anything to save his wife. He would do anything and everything. Give him as much money he wants. He's also a millionaire, billionaire, whatever. He'll give him everything he wants. But what Sheldon wants from him is see that he should give him a blowjob under the table right now, that moment, very second. Now, Richard isn't gay. Sheldon is. The only biggest dilemma over here is, well, is he gonna? Because you think about it, it's like for a person, like even I asked this to Kanishk once, right? I asked him if in US, like you're in US, right? If someone comes to you and tells you on gunpoint that, give me a blowjob or I'll kill you. You told me that I'll tell him to kill myself, kill you only, right? That was what you told me. Right now, imagine a situation where someone has a gun towards someone you love a lot, and you have to do something that's so degrading to you that you would want to kill yourself after that. So that was one story I really liked writing. It's very amazing. It was cool. So that was one story. Yeah.
In short, Aman likes giving guys blowjobs. Or at least thinking about it. Good for you. I mean, I respect all thoughts.
This is the gay friendly
okay.
show. I am not gay. But the story was good. Like the main premise was that the problem was so, something so difficult for him to do that, he'd want to kill himself first before doing something like that. Right. That was something that I really enjoyed writing on that lines. And it turned out to be really funny also. Because I already knew how the characters were, because I watched those shows. So I knew how those guys were gonna talk and what those guys were gonna do. So I kind of knew in my head what I wanted to write. So that was very good for me.
Okay. For me, like what happens is as you grow as a writer, one thing that I've written, the first thing you think, it's great, it's the best work in the world, and all of that comes, when you write a particular piece. But as you try to understand, you unveil it, and it's like the work is okay, so it's not very great. It happens with age, okay. So there is no particular story that I'm very proud of right now. But yes, every work that I try to do, I do it with, with passion, and I try to make it best as possible. But when 1 year, 2 years down the line, I see what mistakes I've done, what improvements I could have made, and then it doesn't become so fascinating to me.
So you don't like any of your stories?
I would say like proud. Like if I will be honest, like currently there are there's some scripts that I want to write, and I have written, like their seed is sown, but right now they're not developed into full blown scripts. And the scripts that I have written completely, yes, like there's not too much uh like too much affinity towards them, that they're great or it's all right.
Wow,
So
what a
no.
diplomatic answer. What a diplomatic answer. Have you tried a career in politics? You really should.
Don't worry, I will try. And I will get 60 years of age. That is the best time.
Matlab,
Okay.
what was the answer? Like, no, right? Like, no. Like,
आंसर
technically it
यही
was
है.
no.
मेरे को कोई पसंद ही नहीं. उसने बस ये बोल दिया. 1000 शब्दों में उसने बोला. खुद बोलता है मैं रीराइट करते समय रिड्यूस करता हूँ. 1000 शब्दों में की चीज बोली उसने. नहीं पसंद भाई मुझे अपनी स्टोरीज.
See, what happens is like, for example, if you're a cook, okay. If you're a cook, you prepare a certain dish in a particular manner. You have a particular recipe. But as you grow older, you try to understand what flavors you can put into the dish, and then you try to explore uh, how this dish could be made in the most perfect way possible. That happens.
हम पूछ रहे तेरे को
ठीक है.
कौन सी डिश पसंद है तू
नहीं,
पूछ रहा है मैं
नहीं,
डिश कैसे बनाता हूँ मतलब
नहीं,
क्या
let me
रिलेशन है
rephrase.
दोनों में
Let me rephrase the question.
Yes.
I am a person who has a gun on your head. ठीक है? I am telling you, I will kill you. Tell me a story that you like a lot. Otherwise, give Kanish a blowjob. That is basically death. No, ये बता मुझे. Tell me what you like. Story क्या अच्छा लगता तेरे को? अपना.
Uh-huh. Then also, there are different, like particularly I like some parts of some short films that I've written.
स्टोरी बता जो तेरे को पसंद है हाउ इज दैट सो डिफिकल्ट
Kanish पैंट खोल.
God is in US.
अमन तू मेरी प्रॉक्सी है जा जा ले ले इससे गोरेगांव में जा
मार दे मुझे. मुझे मार दे तू.
एक स्टोरी नहीं बता पा रहा
Yeah,
इसको
so
कैन यू बिलीव दिस
माया.
okay. No, like currently, I would say then if the situation is at point blank, a gun is there at option of BJ, no. Then I think it would be a story about beauty and non-beauty. So that is a story that I had written way earlier. but I'm not completed it. But it's about the importance of beauty, physical beauty in everyday life.
Can you share the story with us?
I'm not completed it, so when I will do, then I'll share it with you.
We don't have 3-4 years, okay? We don't even know if the podcast will run that long.
It will. Our
Oh,
boss. Big daddy.
confidence.
Big
दोनों का
daddy.
confidence. All right. So this is all up to the viewers if they ask us to continue for the
Next
next.
year, this will be the most viewed podcast on films, movies, or cinema genre.
Okay, you heard it here first. Okay, Avan has called it today on 22nd October at 2:45 p.m.
23rd in
Today,
India.
22nd. Hey, it's 22nd for you also. What are you talking about?
12:14 midnight, past
Ooh.
midnight.
Start
This
for
is
you.
how dedicated we are. We are doing it. Tomorrow we have work. Still, we are going to do this.
Do you have any favorite short films or filmmakers who you draw inspiration from?
Answers.
फर्स्ट अमन जा, ये हार्दिक बहुत लंबा जाएगा, मेरे को मैं पूछ ही
बोल
लिया
दिया
उसको।
मैंने
क्या?
बोला कि आंसर ही नाम है शॉर्ट में।
कौन सा film?
वो था there is a guy who dies and he talks with God and God shows him all the best moments of his life.
Oh, right. You sent me that. That was nice. What about filmmakers? Any particular ones that you like?
Short films, movies.
Oh, movies, series, anything.
Specific. Hardik.
Okay, so not a filmmaker, but there's a channel called NFC of Canada, and they have beautiful short films like various. Sorry, NFB. It's called ONF NFB. So it's a YouTube channel, and they have various short films, and it's animated short films, but there are various, like a lot of short films, and they're very good.
There's one called Omerator too, also, right?
That is a platform for short film submission, but ONF, NFB, they make films.
Okay.
So it's a Canadian. It's about. It's I think related in some way to Canada government, and it's very good.
Okay. Nice.
And so, what are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced when you're writing? Like, it could be this
Before
year.
we move on to that, there's one creator. Her name is Marina Bruno. You watched her videos or short films?
By name, I may not remember, but tell me.
Marina Bruno, right? So you'll have to watch some of her short films. Actually, it's like she makes. If you ever see a progression of her short films, right? She started off from basically nothing. It's like you can see that she had like a phone. She was trying to shoot herself. She was recording herself, creating. She was the actor. She was the writer, director, everything. Now she has not enough money, but she has enough money to invest so that she can hire people and create like beautiful short films. So she hasn't made a lot of them, but she has like I think 12 or 15. And the latest one she created was actually very good, like very good. I don't even remember the name of the short film, but it's very good. It's like Marina Bruno. Just check her out once. Sorry, Kanish, you were saying something.
Marina Bruno.
I was asking like, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced in writing? It could be like a writer's block, or it could be something else. Like, what was the challenge? How did you overcome it?
Rewriting.
Huh?
Rewriting.
Rewriting is the biggest challenge.
Yes.
Basically, on this podcast, there are two people. One says very short answers, one gives very long answers.
You don't give answers at all.
I mean, wow, just wow.
You give blowjobs.
No, actually, what will happen is, when you will start writing, one thing that will happen is you will doubt your own capabilities, whether you're able to write it good or not. that will happen. And to that, I will say just keep on writing. For even you for writer's block or even for rewriting, keep on writing. That's it. Or like if you have a writer's block, just write 15, 20 words, random words, start a paragraph, start writing 2 to 3 paragraphs, then automatically the writer's block will go away, magically will go away, and just keep on writing. Short enough?
Good enough.
Thank you.
The problem I think with at least myself with rewriting is initially what I try to do is try to write the first draft very quickly. Okay.
Mhm.
The reason for doing that is if you, at least what I think is if you try to, not waste time, but you try to invest a lot of time in the very first draft, you don't get started because you think that you write 2 pages and you think this is bad and this is bad, and you try to rewrite those things and you try to change this and that. I feel like if you finish the flow off first of the whole script, whatever you have in your head, finish that off first, then you can maybe sit down with the rewriting part. Now, the problem what comes with the rewriting part is that you kind of feel that the very first draft you write is maybe not the best. You only have very few scenes where you feel that it's bad. You don't really understand the proper, at least I don't understand the proper rewriting aspect of it. That's where the problem comes in. Like, maybe I think these scenes are good, but they might be irrelevant to this whole, the whole film or something. Those are some parts that, can be very tricky to deal with.
So for that, there is a word called kill the darlings, and you have to let it go. Like if you write, like that happens multiple times that you have written a particular scene and you are very particularly fond of it, but you have to kill it if it doesn't make sense in the entire script or to the experience of the film that you're trying to convey. Short enough? I will try to be precise and concise now.
Thank you.
No,
I thought it was a podcast where you get free to talk about, but it's okay. I don't think so it is.
Oh,
No, it
Don't-
is.
my God,
It is.
Hardik is hurt.
Don't democracy here.
So what's next for you in the world of short film script writing? Are there any exciting projects? I know Aman has 0 projects on the horizon. What about you, Hardik?
This is my project.
Oh,
Creating the biggest podcast in the world.
damn, in the world.
So currently, I am like I have 3 short films scripts that I've lined up. Currently, I'm just finishing one of them, and possibly 2 of them I will finish by December. That's my target.
Is there any which can be shot in one day?
No.
2 days?
I don't know. Like in one day, like one of the films can be 2 days. I think so possible with a good director and a good DP. It'll be possible for that, and good actors, of course.
You want to do it in December?
Let's keep it to the podcast and let's not get personal. Okay.
All right, fine.
If the audience wants to invest in the movie, you
ज़्यादा
can.
हो
Let
गया.
us know. What do you think about collaboration between screenwriters? If you're someone who's beginning, who's a beginner and he's starting off, should you collaborate with writers? What do you think? Does that hamper your writing skills or improve them, or what's the take on that?
What do you mean by collaboration? Do you mean like writing a script with another person?
Yes.
Then no, I would completely disagree with that. Because initially you will not have your own voice. You will not know what you want to talk about or what you don't want to talk about. What is your vision? So in that case, if you pair up with someone who's also, so there can be 2 cases. They're also as lost as you, in which case 2 people coming together will just make a sort of a khichdi. In another case, the other person knows what they want, in which case first they will probably not pair up with you, and even if they do, then they'll just make you do all the grunt work because they already know what they want. So you will not have a voice in that. So collaboration with scriptwriters and all, I completely disagree with. What you can do is bounce ideas off of them, bounce scripts off of them, sort of get an idea about what they're thinking and what you can do to improve on it. And then you can think about it and see what you want to actually incorporate, but not collaboration now.
Okay.
For me, like depends, because like for on the first word that I will say no, but it also depends. Maybe it will work for you. Like that you are that kind of person. There is no right or wrong, and it may work for you.
Hmm. Okay, and also, should you start with? Should you look at any workshops out there, or any film schools or anything like that? Any books on writing short films or anything like that? Any suggestions on those lines?
The best thing to do is just write. There is no wrong way, there is no right way. Just write. Slowly you'll become better. The more you try to see what others have done, the more you get diluted as yourself as a person. That's my thinking.
Also, like current situation of the world, that everything that you want to learn is online available. So you can that in that sense, being self-taught is much more uh, preferable. You can do that, but I don't know. No, there are people who have done courses, who have done workshops, and they all can also make good content. So nothing. I would not say to stop them to not go them. If you have the money and the time for that, resources for that, you can go. It's your wish. And similarly, if you don't have the resources, everything is available online. You can do that as well. I can speak for
Hmm.
myself and Kanish, like we are self-taught. I think we have not done any courses, some such as like that. We have just learned it by doing it and by learning it online.
Yeah, I would not suggest going to any sort of agency or whatever. They usually charge an exorbitant amount, and you don't really learn anything specific. They'll just teach you what others have done, and you can learn yourself what others have done through watching movies and reading books and stuff like that. So you can even, if you have certain questions, you can even write to certain authors or script writers. You usually find their email or something similar online. So I would say go through that. Don't waste money on this.
Any final piece of advice for aspiring filmmakers or short film writers or script writers in general?
It would be difficult for you to continue through the journey, because at times you will doubt yourself, and it will be a question whether you're able to do it or not. But I would say then go to your cause, that why you're trying to do it. So the first time, the excitement uh, that kindled your journey on this path, remember that, okay, and you can visit that. More, I think most of the filmmakers do that time and often again. When you're stuck with why are you trying to do it? Because it will happen. It is not an easy journey. So keep that in mind, and as Kanish said, keep on doing it. It may be difficult, but it also has its own perks to it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
Okay. All right, guys, this was for the video. So we discussed a lot about how to write a short film, and I hope you guys will take whatever we said and maybe apply it to your own life and up to your own writing skills. And just write down in the comments, guys, if you have any advice for us on what we can do better in this video or otherwise in general. And also give us topics for what we can discuss about in our next podcast episodes. And do like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching.
Bye.
Just do it.